Clint Eastwood sat at the head of the table, silent as always, watching the room more than participating in it. He was 72 years old, had been in this business for 5 decades, and he'd seen enough casting sessions to last 100 lifetimes. They were all the same. Producers pushing their favorites, agents making calls, money talking louder than talent. The film they were casting was called $1 Million Baby, a small story about a female boxer and her reluctant trainer. Nobody expected it to be a hit. The budget was modest. The subject matter was niche. Most studios had already passed on it. But Clint believed in the script. He'd been holding on to it for years, waiting for the right moment. And now, finally, he was ready to make it. There was just one problem. They couldn't find Maggie Fitzgerald. The role required something rare. An actress who could be vulnerable and fierce at the same time. Someone who could make you believe she'd been beaten down by life but still had enough fire to climb into a boxing ring and fight. Someone who could carry the entire emotional weight of the film on her shoulders. They'd seen dozens of actresses over the past month. Famous names, rising stars, award winners. None of them were right. Some were too polished. Others were too soft. A few had the toughness but lacked the heart. Clint was getting frustrated. Not that he showed it. He never showed much of anything. But the people who knew him could tell. The slight tension in his jaw, the way his eyes went distant during discussions. He was losing faith that they'd find her. "We have one more today," the casting director said, checking her notes. "Hilary Swank. She was in Boys Don't Cry, won an Oscar for it." One of the producers, a heavyset man named Richard who'd been with the project from the beginning, made a sound. Not quite a laugh, more like a dismissive grunt. "Swank, for a boxer, she specifically requested to audition," the casting director said. "She's been training for 3 months already, on her own, without being asked." "Training for what? We haven't even cast the role." "She read the script somehow, got her hands on it, and she's been in the gym every day since, learning to box." Richard shook his head. "She's too skinny, too feminine. Maggie needs to look like she could actually take a punch. Swank looks like a strong wind would knock her over." Another producer, a woman named Catherine, nodded in agreement. "I saw Boys Don't Cry. She was brilliant, but that was a completely different type of role. She played androgynous, vulnerable. This is a fighter, a warrior. I'm not sure she has that in her. Plus, she's been cold for years," Richard added. Boys Don't Cry was 1999. What's she done since? Nothing memorable. Her career's on life support. This feels like a desperation move. Clint still hadn't spoken. He was looking at Hilary Swank's headshot, studying her face with that intensity he brought to everything. The others kept talking, building their case against her, but Clint wasn't listening. He was thinking about something else entirely. "Bring her in," he said quietly. The room went silent. When Clint spoke, people listened. "Clint," Richard started, "I really don't think she's right for—" "Bring her in." That was the end of the discussion. 5 minutes later, Hilary Swank walked into the conference room, and everyone understood immediately why the producers had doubted her. She was thin, almost gaunt. Her clothes hung on her frame like they were borrowed from someone larger. She had that look that actresses get when they're between jobs for too long, that hungry, anxious energy that comes from too many auditions and not enough callbacks. But there was something else, too. Something in the way she held herself. A quiet determination that didn't match her fragile appearance. She walked into that room full of powerful people who had already decided against her, and she didn't flinch. "Miss Swank," the casting director said, "thank you for coming in. This is— I know who everyone is." Hilary's voice was steady, not rude, just confident. "Mr. Eastwood, thank you for seeing me. I know I'm not the obvious choice." Richard couldn't help himself. "That's an understatement." Hilary turned to look at him. Her eyes were calm, focused, the eyes of someone who had heard every dismissal, every rejection, every reason why she wasn't good enough, the eyes of someone who had stopped letting those words penetrate. "You think I can't play a boxer?" she said. It wasn't a question. "Honestly? No, you don't have the build. You don't have the presence. Maggie Fitzgerald needs to look like she could step into a ring and survive. You look like you'd blow away in a stiff breeze. Anyone else might have crumbled. Anyone else might have made excuses or gotten defensive or started explaining why they were actually perfect for the role. That's what actors usually did when confronted with rejection. Hilary Swank did something different. She smiled. "Stand up," she said to Richard. "Excuse me?" "Stand up, please." Richard looked around the room, confused. The other producers were watching with bemused curiosity. Clint's expression hadn't changed, but there was something new in his eyes. Interest. Maybe even amusement. "Go ahead, Richard," Clint said. "Stand up." Richard stood, uncertain what was happening. Hilary walked around the table until she was standing directly in front of him. He was a big man, 6 feet tall, probably 250 pounds. He towered over her. "Hit me," Hilary said. "What?" "Hit me. Throw a punch. Don't worry, you won't connect." Richard laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous. I'm not going to—" "You said I couldn't take a punch. Prove it. Throw one." The room had gone completely still. This wasn't how auditions worked. This wasn't how anything worked. But there was something in Hilary Swank's voice, something that made it impossible to look away. "Miss Swank," Catherine said, "I really don't think this is—" "It's fine," Clint interrupted. "Richard, throw a punch." Richard looked at Clint, then at Hilary, then back at Clint. He was trapped. If he refused, he looked weak. If he agreed, he was throwing a punch at a woman half his size in a professional setting. "This is insane," he muttered. But he threw the punch. It wasn't a real punch. It was slow, telegraphed, the kind of punch you throw when you don't actually want to hit someone. A pulled punch designed to prove a point without causing harm. It didn't matter. Hilary slipped it like she'd been boxing her whole life. One small movement of her head, and Richard's fist sailed past her ear. Before he could recover, she was inside his guard, her own fist stopping half an inch from his chin. "That's called a counter," she said quietly. "You throw, I slip, I make you pay. That's what Maggie Fitzgerald does. That's who she is. She takes what the world throws at her and she turns it into something else." She stepped back, giving Richard his space. "I've been training for 3 months, 4 hours a day. I've been hit more times than I can count. I've had black eyes and split lips and ribs so sore I couldn't sleep. I've learned what it feels like to be in a ring with someone who wants to hurt you. And I've learned what it feels like to survive that, to keep going, to refuse to stay down." She looked around the room at all the faces watching her. "You're right that I'm thin. You're right that I don't look like a traditional boxer. But Maggie doesn't come from a boxing background either. She comes from nothing, from a trailer park where nobody believed in her. She walks into a gym full of people who tell her she doesn't belong, and she proves them wrong through sheer will, through heart, through refusing to accept what everyone else thinks is possible." Her voice cracked slightly. "I know what that feels like. To have everyone tell you you're not enough, that you don't have what it takes, that you should give up and go home. I've been hearing that my entire career, and I'm still here, just like Maggie would be." The room was silent. Hilary turned to face Clint directly. "Mr. Eastwood, I'm not asking you to take a chance on me. I'm asking you to let me prove what I already know, that I am Maggie Fitzgerald, that I've been her my whole life, that everything I've been through, every rejection, every failure, every time I've been counted out, it was all preparation for this role." She paused. "Please, give me the chance to show you." Clint looked at her for a long moment. That weathered face that had seen everything, that had played 100 tough guys, directed 100 stories about people fighting against impossible odds. He knew something about underdogs, about being underestimated, about proving people wrong. He turned to the producers. "She's Maggie." Richard started to object. "Clint, we haven't even seen her read. We haven't—" "She's Maggie," Clint repeated. The tone left no room for argument. With respect, Catherine said carefully, shouldn't we at least have her do a proper audition? Read some scenes? This was unconventional, but it wasn't a screen test. Clint stood up slowly. Everyone in the room felt the shift. When Clint Eastwood stood, it meant the meeting was over. I've been making movies for 50 years, he said. I've seen thousands of auditions, tens of thousands, and you know what I've learned? The good ones can act. The great ones don't have to. He pointed at Hillary. What she just did wasn't acting. It wasn't a scene. It was her telling us who she is, showing us what she's made of. And what she's made of is exactly what Maggie Fitzgerald needs to be. Heart, fire, the refusal to accept limitations that other people try to put on you. He looked at Richard. You laughed when her name came up, said she didn't look like a boxer. But that's the point. Nobody looks at Maggie and sees a fighter. They see a skinny girl from a trailer park with no prospects and no future, and she proves them wrong, every single one of them. He walked toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. You asked what she's done since Boys Don't Cry. What she's done is survive in an industry that forgets people the moment they stop being useful. She survived 4 years of being told she was a one-hit wonder, 4 years of auditions that led nowhere, 4 years of her career being called on life support. His voice hardened, and then, when she finally got a chance to fight for something she believed in, she didn't just prepare. She transformed. 3 months of boxing training, on her own, without knowing if she'd ever get this meeting. That's not desperation. That's dedication. That's exactly the kind of person I want in my film. He opened the door. Hillary, follow me. We're going to the gym. I want to see what 3 months looks like. Hillary Swank followed Clint Eastwood out of that conference room, leaving behind a table full of stunned producers and a pile of headshots that would never be looked at again. The gym was a real boxing gym in downtown L.A. Not a fancy Hollywood facility with air conditioning and pristine equipment. A real gym. The kind that smelled like sweat and leather and decades of hard work. The kind where actual fighters trained. Clint had called ahead. When they arrived, a trainer named Hector was waiting with gloves and hand wraps. "Show me," Clint said. For the next 2 hours, Hillary Swank showed him everything. She hit the heavy bag until her arms burned. She shadowboxed with footwork that revealed genuine training. She sparred 3 rounds with a female fighter who didn't hold back, taking punches to the body and the head, giving as good as she got. She wasn't a professional boxer. She never would be. But she was credible. More than credible. She moved like someone who had learned to love the pain, learned to channel the fear, learned to find something inside herself that couldn't be taught. When it was over, she stood in front of Clint, drenched in sweat, breathing hard, a small cut on her lip from the sparring. "Well?" she asked. Clint nodded once. "You'll need to put on 15 pounds of muscle. Can you do that in 4 months?" Hillary's face broke into a smile. The first real smile she'd allowed herself all day. "I can do it in 3. 4 months, Clint repeated. "Don't rush. Do it right. I want you to look like someone who's been fighting her whole life. Because that's what Maggie is. And that's what you're going to show the world." He started walking toward the gym door, then stopped. "Hillary." "Yes?" "That thing you did in the conference room, making Richard throw a punch. That was smart. Risky, but smart. I needed them to see me differently, to stop seeing the headshot and start seeing the fighter." Clint smiled slightly. That thin, weathered smile that so few people ever saw. "That's exactly what Maggie would have done. You didn't just convince them today, you convinced me." Production began in June 2004. For the next 3 months, Hillary Swank transformed herself completely. She gained 19 pounds of muscle. She trained with professional boxers 6 days a week. She studied fight footage until she could recognize styles and strategies. She learned to take a punch without flinching, to throw combinations without thinking, to move around a ring like someone who belonged there. But the physical transformation was only part of it. She also spent time in real boxing gyms, not as an actress researching a role, but as someone trying to understand the soul of the sport, She talked to fighters about why they fought. She listened to trainers explain what separated the good from the great. She absorbed their stories, their struggles, their reasons for getting into a ring when the world told them they should stay out. Clint watched all of this with quiet approval. He rarely gave compliments, rarely said much of anything, but Hillary knew he was watching, knew he was measuring her commitment against his expectations, and she was determined to exceed both. One night, about halfway through training, Hillary asked Clint why he'd believed in her when nobody else did. They were sitting outside the gym, the LA night warm and thick around them. Clint was drinking coffee. Hillary was icing her knuckles after a particularly brutal sparring session. "You want the honest answer?" Clint asked. "Always. Because you reminded me of someone." "Who?" Clint was quiet for a moment, looking out at the street. "Me, 50 years ago, when I was a contract player at Universal and they told me I'd never be a star, wrong face, too tall, no charisma. I heard every version of 'you're not right for this' that exists." He took a sip of coffee. "I could have believed them, could have given up and gone back to digging swimming pools, which is what I was doing before I got my first break. But something in me refused, something that said they were wrong, even if I couldn't prove it yet." He looked at Hillary. "When you walked into that conference room, I saw the same thing. That refusal to accept other people's limitations. That hunger to prove something that goes beyond wanting a role. You needed to be Maggie Fitzgerald. Not wanted, needed. Because her story is your story. Her fight is your fight. And that kind of connection can't be faked, can't be manufactured. It's either there or it isn't. So you took a chance on me." "No." Clint shook his head. "I recognized something I'd seen before. That's not taking a chance. That's pattern recognition. 50 years of experience telling me that this person has what it takes, even if nobody else can see it yet." Hillary felt tears forming but didn't let them fall. This wasn't the time for sentiment. This was the time for work. "I won't let you down," she said. "I know you won't. That's why you're here." $1 Million Baby was shot in 37 days. Fast, efficient, exactly how Clint liked to work. First takes were often the only takes. Scenes were captured with minimal fuss and maximum truth. Hillary's performance was extraordinary. Everyone on set knew it. There's a thing that happens sometimes on a film when an actor finds something transcendent, something beyond technique or preparation. A kind of possession where the character takes over and the person disappears. That's what happened with Hillary Swank and Maggie Fitzgerald. Every scene, every moment, every look and gesture and line delivery came from somewhere real. Somewhere that couldn't be taught or directed into existence. She wasn't playing Maggie. She was channeling her, becoming her, losing herself completely in the story of a woman who refused to be defined by her circumstances. The most difficult scenes were the fight sequences. Hillary took real punches, real falls, real impact. She insisted on doing as much as possible herself, without stunt doubles or camera tricks. She wanted the audience to see her getting hit and believe it was real, because it was real. By the end of production, Hillary had broken 2 bones in her foot, cracked a rib, and accumulated more bruises than she could count. She'd also delivered one of the most powerful performances of the decade. On the last day of shooting, Clint called a wrap and the crew applauded. Standard procedure at the end of any film. But then something unusual happened. Clint walked over to Hillary in front of everyone and shook her hand. "You proved them wrong," he said. "Every single one of them. And you did it the only way that matters, through the work." Hillary couldn't speak. The emotion of the past 4 months, all the training, all the pain, all the doubt and fear and determination, it overwhelmed her in that moment. Clint understood. He'd been there himself 50 years ago when someone finally gave him a chance to show what he could do. "Go home," he said. "Rest and get ready. Because when this film comes out, everything changes." $1 Million Baby premiered in December 2004 to universal acclaim. Critics called it a masterpiece. Audiences were devastated by its emotional power. The film made over $200 million worldwide, far exceeding anyone's expectations for a small drama about a female boxer. When Oscar nominations were announced, the film received 7 nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director for Clint, and Best Actress for Hilary Swank. The night of the ceremony, February 27, 2005, Hilary sat in the audience at the Kodak Theater, wearing a navy blue gown, trying to calm her nerves. The Best Actress category was announced late in the show. 4 other incredible performances were nominated. Any of them could win. When her name was called, Hilary didn't hear it at first. The applause registered before the words did. Then Clint was standing next to her, offering his hand, helping her up. "Told you," he said quietly. Everything changes. She walked to the stage in a daze. The Oscar was heavier than she expected. The lights were brighter. The audience was a sea of faces she couldn't quite process. She took a breath and began her speech. "I don't know quite what to say, except that I am so blessed. I'm so grateful." She thanked her team, her family, her fellow nominees. Standard Oscar speech material, but then she got to Clint. "And finally, Mr. Clint Eastwood, who believed in me when nobody else did, who gave me a chance when every door was closing, who saw something in me that I was terrified didn't exist." She paused, fighting back tears. "There was a meeting before I got this role, a room full of people who thought I was wrong for Maggie Fitzgerald. Too thin, too fragile, not tough enough, and Mr. Eastwood looked at all of them and said one sentence that changed my life." She looked directly at Clint in the audience. He said, "She's Maggie." That was it. No explanation, no justification, just absolute certainty in someone who had given him no reason for certainty. That's who Clint Eastwood is, someone who sees people clearly, even when they can't see themselves. The audience applauded. Clint nodded once, that small acknowledgement that meant everything. This Oscar belongs to him as much as it belongs to me. Because without his vision, without his faith, without his refusal to listen to everyone who said I wasn't enough, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. She held up the statue. "Mr. Eastwood, thank you, for proving that sometimes the people who look like underdogs are actually champions waiting for their chance, and for giving me mine." The next day, every entertainment outlet ran stories about Hilary's speech, about the meeting where producers laughed at her, about Clint's faith in someone everyone else had dismissed. Reporters tracked down the details. They found Richard, the producer who'd told Hilary she looked like a strong wind would knock her over. He declined to comment. But a few weeks later, Clint gave an interview where he talked about that day. "They asked me why I believed in her," Clint said. "Why I was willing to bet the whole film on someone everyone else had written off. And the answer is simple. Because I've been written off too. Because I know what it feels like to be told you're not enough. You don't have what it takes. You should just go home and give up." He paused. Hilary Swank walked into that room and showed us who she was. Not through acting, not through pretending, through being. She showed us a fighter, someone who'd been knocked down 100 times and kept getting up. That's not a skill you learn. That's a character trait. That's who you are at your core. "And the one sentence," the interviewer asked, "when you said, 'She's Maggie,' and ended the discussion." Clint smiled. "Some things don't need explanation. Some things are just true. You see them or you don't. I saw her. That was enough." Hilary Swank's career was transformed by Million Dollar Baby. She went from being a one-hit wonder whose best days seemed behind her to a 2-time Academy Award winner, one of the most respected actresses of her generation. But she never forgot where she came from, never forgot the years of rejection, never forgot the meeting where powerful people laughed at her dreams, and she never forgot what Clint Eastwood taught her about faith. In 2015, 10 years after winning her second Oscar, Hilary was asked about the most important lesson she'd learned in Hollywood. "Clint Eastwood taught me that you don't need everyone to believe in you," she said. You just need one person. One person with the power to say yes. One person who sees something that others miss. One person who's willing to bet on you when betting on you seems foolish. She paused. He also taught me something else, that you have to be ready when that person comes along. I trained for 3 months before I ever walked into that audition. I prepared like I already had the role, because opportunity doesn't wait for you to get ready. You have to be ready before it arrives. And if it never arrives? Hillary smiled. Then at least you know you did everything you could. But here's what I've learned. When you prepare like you deserve the opportunity, when you work like you've already been chosen, somehow the opportunity finds you. It's like the universe rewards readiness, rewards commitment, rewards people who refuse to accept the limitations everyone else tries to put on them. Is that what Maggie Fitzgerald would say? That's what Clint Eastwood taught me, and through him, that's what Maggie taught the world. 2 decades later, $1 Million Baby remains one of the most powerful films about determination, sacrifice, and the cost of chasing dreams. It won 4 Academy Awards. It made stars out of everyone involved. It proved that small stories about overlooked people could move audiences just as much as any blockbuster. But the real story isn't on the screen. The real story is about a meeting in March 2003, where a room full of powerful people laughed at Hilary Swank's dreams, where they called her too thin, too fragile, not tough enough, where they dismissed her as a desperate actress whose career was on life support. And it's about Clint Eastwood sitting at the head of that table, watching Hilary Swank show them who she really was, watching her refuse to accept their rejection, watching her fight for something she believed in, then standing up and saying 2 words that changed everything. She's Maggie. That's the power of faith, of seeing someone clearly, of betting on the underdog when everyone else has already counted them out. Clint Eastwood has made over 40 films. He's won 5 Academy Awards. He's one of the most celebrated directors in Hollywood history. But if you ask him about his proudest moments, he'll tell you about the ones where he believed in someone that nobody else believed in, where he saw potential that others missed, where he gave someone a chance to prove what they'd known all along. That's the job, Clint once said, not just making movies, making people, giving them the opportunity to become who they were always meant to be. Hilary Swank was always meant to be Maggie Fitzgerald. She just needed one person to see it, one person to say yes, one sentence to change everything. She's Maggie.